This is a very quick first look really at Blackview's new 8900. Kind of looks a lot like a lot of other smartphones that I've reviewed. You know, the usual suspects. Ruggedized smartphones, they've usually got night vision on them or thermal camera on them. Well, this one has got night vision and thermal camera built in. It has the FLIR module, which is kind of the ones you tend to find on these phones. And I thought that I'd come to this very dirty engine bay and show you very quickly the thermal camera in action, because it's one of the most sort of requested features of these things. Before I switch that on, pretty standard. You got the sort of a custom button on one side, volume, power button with fingerprint reader on the other side. This thing is waterproof, usual stuff all over the ports, very ruggedized. But the thermal camera, probably one of the things I get the most questions about, most requests about, and people have wanted to see it in action. While we unlock this phone, just a quick note here that this, let's put my passcode in it because I'm touching the there we go, touching the fingerprint reader too much. The fingerprint reader is in one of those places where you tend to sort of brush against, especially if you're holding and the phone's locked. Okay, so it runs Android 13, which is kind of nice because a lot of these phones run sort of older versions of Android. And people have been wanting to know what's the experience with these thermal cameras out of the box. So this is basically it. I'm going to find the app. You scroll all the way down. My FLIR light, I'm not sure what's light about this app. Press it. Sorry, there's a lot of glare on this screen because we're getting our 1 week of summer here in the UK. So there we go. The camera's fired up. You saw it took a few seconds. And let me just, there we go. This is the sort of thing that you sort of expect from it. So this is the upstream O2 sensor on the car, on the exhaust, probably one of the hottest spots on there. So we're getting about 120 degrees. You don't want to be touching that stuff. Notice how you can even see through the plastic, and you sort of can see things that your eyes can't see hidden away in here. That's the oil cap. As you can see, there's a little bit of offset with the camera. There is some level of customization you can do on these things, but in my experience it varies depending on whether you're really close up to something or far away as to how that alignment sort of works. So generally I find that you can sort of guess it and you sort of figure out where that alignment is. As you can see, the camera's reasonably responsive. I've sort of seen better ones, I've sort of seen worse ones. For this feels sort of middle of the road. Maybe we'll see more updates down the line. But this gives you a sort of an idea of what you can expect to see from the camera for this as you're going around an engine bay. As for kind of like why you would kind of want to use a thermal camera, well, I kind of find an awful lot of stuff with this useful. For example, if I come over here to the wheel, and you can usually use this to have a good look at the braking system and find out if there's any kind of overheating in the braking system. It's a good way to find wires that might be shorted or overheating. It's a good way to find maybe circuits that are staying on because when the car is supposed to be asleep. There's a million and one uses to this, and people say, well, how do you learn to use a thermal camera? Basically, you become a nerd and you start pointing your thermal camera at all kinds of stuff, so that basically you start to learn to look, well, what does something look like that you know works fine? What kind of temperatures can you expect? Blah blah blah. And then you sort of extrapolate from there, and you can notice when things aren't right. For example, there's these battery cables here, and you know they're in the baking engine bay here, but they're about 50 degrees, 46 degrees there. That's quite normal, especially for the sort of heat that we're looking at here. But however, if there was some kind of problem with maybe, say, an earth problem in this car, or a ground problem with this car, you might expect these cables to overheat. You might be expecting to see connections on the battery overheat. All sorts of things. Basically, you figure out this superpower by playing with it and learning it and getting to see what the world looks like with this superpower. So this has been a very, very quick look at the new Blackview 8900, BV8900. Yeah, rugged phone, Android 13, all the kind of usual things you'd expect, kind of, you know, it's not going to kind of be bothered by being tossed around, dropped on the floor, banged on things, with the added advantage of a thermal camera for kind of examining, looking for kind of the world through this kind of thing that we can't see with our eyes. And also it's got night vision, which I find sort of half useful. I might actually kind of like find some kind of uses for it as I go along in the world. Personally, I find night vision to be kind of annoying because you end up looking at a bright screen in pitch darkness, which means that you sort of lose your night vision. I don't know, maybe if you're a hunter or you nature photographer or something, maybe you might find that useful. Anyway, new Blackview phone with thermal camera. Very, very quick first impressions.